Today we visit the Lithuanian district of Kearney, New Jersey, and a very special Lithuanian bank that is almost 100 years old and for much of its history was completely controlled by Lithuanians. And one of the Lithuanian descendants currently in its board is right next to me today. So what can you tell me about the history of the Schuyler Bank?
Well, August, the history goes back, like you were saying, for this bank, 100 years, 1924. This area, for probably about 1 square mile, was predominantly settled by Lithuanian immigrants. And a lot of them were relatively poor, and there was a lot of other banks in the area, but a lot of these banks would not lend to Lithuanians, number one, because they didn't have a lot of money. They just came over from Lithuania. And fortunately, there was a number of rich Lithuanians who decided to put their money together and form a bank, a savings and loan bank, and which provided a source of income so that they could buy a house, or get a mortgage, or buy a car or something, mostly to buy a house. And Schuyler Savings and Loan was formed back in 1924 to just fill that need, because this area, for about 1 square mile, was predominantly Lithuanian. And my mother had settled right on this street, as a matter of fact, just down this street a little bit, with one of her friends when she came to Kearney in the 1920s. She was a young teenager, and I wound up growing up on the street right next to it on Duke Street. These streets were predominantly settled by Lithuanians, and the bank, Schuyler Savings Bank, offered that opportunity to get a loan, to buy a home, to get a mortgage, so that they could live and reside in the town of Kearney.
The district still has the Lithuanian Church of Our Lady of Sorrows, some Lithuanian monuments and crosses, some of them actually funded by the Schuyler Bank, but the population here has changed. So how did it change, and how did the bank manage to survive even with the changing population? As I understand, when you became a board member, the board was still 100% Lithuanian, yes?
Correct. The board was, from its first stages of 1924, it was entirely Lithuanian. When I came on the board in 1998, it was entirely Lithuanian, and myself being a part of it. But that has changed. It changed in 2003, but for probably 75 years, the goal of the bank was to offer services and to take care of the Lithuanian population, which was surrounded by Lithuanians. And certainly, as time changes, the people change. They die off, they move out, they get married, they move to other cities. And the same thing happened in this particular section of Kearney, where there's not too many Lithuanians left anymore. And it's, I would say, predominantly Peruvian and Ecuadorian. So it's got a South American touch to it now. How the bank has survived, well, you just learn how to adapt to different people, and you bring in people who can speak Portuguese, who can speak Spanish, to bring in the native population where you're surrounded by. And we're a solid bank. We're always in the black, and we always have been, and ever since I've been on the board for 25 years. And we're a small bank. We have another branch in Harrison, New Jersey, but it has offered its services for so many years to the Lithuanians in this area to build their houses, and you can see the fruits of their development, and their houses still remain in the area now.
Yeah, so as I understand, back in those days, for Lithuanian immigrants who came even before World War I, it was still quite difficult to get, let's say, loan from a regular American bank. And that's why a Lithuanian bank was a necessary institution in a Lithuanian district, yes?
Yes, it came in very handy at the time. Certainly, like you're saying, August, it could have come in earlier, because Lithuanians came in here probably starting around 1880s, where the immigration from Lithuania came tremendously from into the United States, into New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and especially Chicago. They settled greatly in those areas. And right around the turn of the century, my grandmother came to the United States in 1906, and she settled in Yonkers, New York. But my mother, who was born in 1913, she wound up in Kearney, probably somewhere in the late 1920s, early 1930s as a young teenager. And like I say, she came to a friend who was a Lithuanian friend right on this street called Tappan Street, and lived a number of years and settled here. She wound up getting married to my father, and he was a German. And my mother and my father wound up having me, my sister, who is a little bit older than me. So I'm half German and half Lithuanian. My grandmother's original name was, and I just asked Aistė about this name, and it's called Ruxtella. That was her maiden name from Panevėžys. And she says, I never heard of that name before, so I'm a little worried, but I'm sure she's from the area of Panevėžys. And just as a side note, she lived on a farm outside Panevėžys, and during the Russian takeover, they did take the farm that she lived on and turned it into an airport. And it was probably a military airport, and August probably says it's the airport just to the east of Panevėžys, which is probably where my grandmother's farm was. My mother used to tell me a story that she used to play the accordion for the Russian soldiers who sometimes may stop by the farmhouse, and she used to, probably for some food and things like that, and she used to play for them. You know, maybe they had actually a little vodka. We're not sure, but she probably offered some vodka for them, and they had probably a good time in the farmhouse that particular evening while she played the accordion for these Russian soldiers. That's part of the history that I know.
It's very nice to see a Lithuanian established institution surviving for so long, and still many Lithuanian touches existing there in Kearney, New Jersey. We have visited each of the Lithuanian sites here, and we have marked them on map.trulithuania.com, map of Lithuanian heritage sites in America, and global.trulithuania.com, encyclopedia of Lithuanian heritage sites abroad. And we have also on this YouTube channel a bit more interviews about the New Jersey Lithuanian heritage that I invite you to watch.